To say I want to introduce our speaker, because the speaker took it upon himself, said I'm speaking. So we're doing good today. So with that being said, with all seriousness, I would like to introduce this gentleman whom, of course, we all love, we all know, but in my way of introducing, I listen and I've been learning things about him, him and his lovely wife and what they have done, and what they mean to Rotary, what they mean to us as an organization here at Dilworth. It means a lot, to have his enthusiasm, his leadership. They brought what the Federal Bureau of Investigation taught them, well, about commitment, leadership, focus, discipline, and all things honesty. And that's what they bring, and that's what he brings to Rotary. We're excited, and I'm excited to continue watching and learning. He's mentoring me from afar, even though he doesn't know it. I watch and I listen and learn. Very, very involved and committed gentleman to community. He's supposed to be retired, but I don't see it. He has done a phenomenal work in his life as someone is in his career, in his family life. It's a beautiful family. I love following and watching all the awesomeness from his children, from marriages to grandchildren to this little beautiful little puppy they have that takes over their home. So I watch from afar, but I am so close because it means a lot to me to be able to learn from someone who has esteemed greatness and excellence about themselves. So, and being the one that's going to become our next district governor as well, and we are excited because that is showing what Dilworth Rotary really means to Rotary and here in North Carolina as a whole. We have a lot of great men and women and leaders that's in this organization that is impacting Rotary overall in the state. And this is another example of what we mean, what this organization means to North Carolina, because we have another district governor coming out of this Rotary Club, and that is impactful in itself. We're going to have some great information and great news shared for us today with much enthusiasm as always. And with that, without going any further, I want to introduce to you our upcoming and soon to be district governor, Mr. Kevin Kendrick.
Well, I appreciate all of that, Daryl, but thank you. I really do truly appreciate it. Can you guys hear me online?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Our speaker was supposed to be a woman that I know. She's a bike rider, just an incredible woman. Her name is Mary Adler Beal. She did a bicycle trek across Africa from top to bottom earlier this year, and unfortunately she called us last night. Yeah, I can't do it. I've got a doctor's thing that I've got to do tomorrow. So I thought, and Jenny had already sent out the newsletter, so we didn't have much time to arrange an alternate speaker. So that's why y'all are stuck with me. That's why I'm going to change your thinking. No, seriously, it really did give me an opportunity to, with this being the important pivotal year that it is, our 75th anniversary. I'd already been working on a Wikipedia entry for our founder, and I will go ahead and begin sharing my screen here. Give me a minute.
With that introduction, it sounds like he's gonna run for district governor.
Sounds like
it.
All right. So I'm going to talk about our beginning, our founder of this club, a gentleman by the name of Woodford Kennedy. And bear with me here, I'm trying to minimize my part of this screen, so cool. Woodford Kennedy, what a guy. This is a copy of the census from 1900. It's hard to see on the screen there, but this yellow part, this is Woodford's, Woody as he was called, his family. He was born on April 14th, 1895 in Wilmington, North Carolina, to David Sloan Kennedy, his father, and Susan Estelle Armstrong, who had married on November 3rd, 1886 in Culpeper, Virginia.
My father was David Kennedy and my birthday was November 3rd.
Oh my
We
gosh.
have to be related.
It's
Have to
serendipitous.
be.
It's gotta be.
Have
It's
to
gotta
be
be.
related to
Yes.
this man.
By the time of this census, however, as you can see, that they had relocated to Culpeper, Virginia. And the census, of course, reflected all of his brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, for the family, his mom passed away in September of 1901, and she was buried in Warsaw, Duplin County, North Carolina. This is a copy of the 1910 census, and it shows David Kennedy Sr. up here, and you can see David Jr. as a son, and then you see Woodford. Woodford is listed as being 15 or 16 years old at the time, but interestingly, they're listed as boarders here. They were living with this individual, a guy by the name of Leonidas Middleton. And yet another tragedy for the family. His father was going to die later that year in November of 1910, leaving Woody orphaned along with his brothers and sisters. So here's young Woody. Even though he grew up in orphanages, he did enough with his life by taking odd jobs around different farms and in different locations to enroll at the North Carolina College of Agricultural and Mechanical Arts, now known as NC State. This is a picture of Woody from that time, and this is another picture of him. He attended from 1913 through 1916. This picture is actually from the Argo-Mech yearbook, which was what they called their yearbook at the time. In that yearbook, he was listed as one of 6 textile seniors and editor-in-chief for a college periodical that they called the Red and White. And of course, as you can see in this picture, his nickname was Pee. Better than Woodford, yes, I agree. Of course, the Great War happened in 1917. That's when the United States, who knows when that war started, by the way, World War I, who can tell me? 1914, that's absolutely right. Do you all know what Rotary did in 1914, just before that war started? Rotary was a fledgling organization at that time. But the directors of Rotary, including Paul Harris, all signed a letter that was directed to the heads of states of countries around the world, begging them to look for peace. That's really how peace became the foundation. It's the foundational focus area for Rotary, because it was the first time that we actually marshaled our leaders and sent a letter to the heads of governments asking them to please try peace instead of war. Nevertheless, it didn't happen. Lusitania was sunk during this time, and even though President Woodrow Wilson pledged that he ran on the campaign of he kept us out of war, with the sinking of the Lusitania, that all changed. And so in 1917, the U.S. entered the war. This is Woody Armstrong's draft registration card. His employment is shown as the U.S. government with the ROTC at Fort Oglethorpe, and his draft card identified him as a corporal in the Coast Guard Artillery Corps, where he had served for 1 year as part of the North Carolina National Guard. This is the back part of that draft registration card. And then he became a part of the Battery A of the 317th Field Artillery, 81st Division, nicknamed the Wildcats. You can't really identify Woody in this picture, but this is a picture of that particular unit. This is, these two represent other pictures of Camp Jackson in South Carolina, where he did all of his training. He sailed on August 7th, 1918, that you can see in this manifest. He was on this ship called the Metagama, sailed on, again, August 7th, 1918, from New York to France as part of Battery A, the 317th Field Artillery. This is a picture of the boat that he sailed on. This was actually a troop transport that was used regularly during 1917, 1918 to ferry troops over to France. And here is the insignia of the 81st Division Wildcats. It's a pretty tame looking cat, but nevertheless, it was there. So there's a guy by the name of Hugh Jones who served as kind of the historian for the 317th Field Artillery and Battery B until he was discharged. But he came up with these statistics and when he was recording the war record for the 81st Division. The guys were all from South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and Puerto Rico. They sailed for France, as we know, in August 1918 and served in the Saint-Dié and Somme-Dieppe sectors. They spent 31 days on the line, advancing 5.5 kilometers and captured 101 prisoners. And they actually suffered fairly heavy losses, with 251 killed and 973 wounded. The war ends, right? Who knows when the war ended? Tom, you can answer. 1918. What day?
November 4th.
Close. November 11th. 11, 18, at 11, 11. That was the time. And it was very intentional. Yes, hence Veterans Day. But the war years, most of the soldiers came back to the United States from that time. I was reading an interesting article. You talk about veterans from that time. Some of the veterans from France, when they were released from service after the armistice was signed, went back to their towns and their farms, but they were not welcomed back with open arms. They were just kind of, the war was very old for French people at that time and going on for 4 years, and people were really kind of over the war. When the veterans came back, when the first veterans came back on the French side, they were given a severance pay of 50 francs. That was it, which would today be the equivalent of about 52 euros. Not a lot of money for the service. Some of them were given a suit of clothes, but that was it. And I couldn't help but think about the way that we have welcomed back veterans, especially from the Vietnam conflict recently, and it was very, very similar. So there's a precedent for that. Again, most of our troops came back. They came back on different transport ships. They were happy to get home. Woody, however, decided he was going to stick around. He had graduated from NC A&M, and he was very, very interested in education. So he studied at this picture. This picture is a picture of the Sorbonne University. The Sorbonne is very, very, very famous. It's been around since the 1200s. It's an institute that is still considered one of the most desirable places to study today, even. But Woody went back there for some post-engineering studies, and just reading a little bit about Sorbonne University. This was also where Madame Marie Curie and her husband went to school. And Madame Curie, as a matter of fact, became she became the first female faculty member at the Sorbonne. So he found in the post-war years, university and love. So this is not a picture of Woody, but a representative picture of some doughboy hooking up with some French mademoiselle post-war. This is a picture, however, of, hard to see her in that picture, but this is a picture of his bride. They got married in May of 1919 in France, and this paper here actually says it's a request from Woody for his wife to be issued a visa to come to the United States.
How old was she? She looks so young in that picture.
She was born actually in her records vary, but she was born in 1896 or 8. So she was over 20 years old. She was 23, 24 years old at the time that they were married. And interestingly, her name is listed in all of this paperwork as Alphonsine Bresson. She comes to the United States, she uses that name for a little while, and then all of a sudden, in every piece of information I can find, you don't see her referred to as Alphonsine anymore. She becomes Lucette. And Lucette would be the name that she was forever known from that day forward. But clearly, beautiful woman.
Same woman.
Same woman.
Yeah.
Same woman.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. A Charlotte Observer article from April 27, 1952 indicated that the marriage of then Lieutenant Kennedy and Mademoiselle Bresson took place on May 27, 1919. So, Woody got back into the textile business. That's his yearbook said. He was a textiles guy, one of 6. And that's exactly what he did. They settled into a life in Charlotte. He got involved in the textile business. He was actually selling textile-related products in North Carolina and South Carolina. He did a lot of traveling back in the 1920s. But in the 1930s, there was a great article in the Charlotte Observer about this patent that he developed for, it was a 12-spindle Fletcher duplex double twister produced by the Fletcher Company. And he was actually named in that. Interestingly, there was another giant textile company starting up, had started up in the 1920s by this individual, William Neville. And of course, we know William because he was one of the founding members, along with Woody, of our Charlotte Dilworth Club. So, Rotary in the war years. Kennedy was named in an article in the Charlotte Observer dated February 9th, 1938, as one of 9 new members of the Charlotte Rotary Club, which was about 20 years old at that time. His company, WAK Industries, was the first company to take on a war contract, and that happened 6 months before Pearl Harbor. So that would have been in around May or June of 1941. And interestingly, an article in the Observer talks about a timing mechanism on 20-millimeter shells that were being used at Anzio in Italy during World War II, and how the WAK company was pressed into service to produce some fuse setting wrenches, which were successfully used to remediate the problem. They received a Special Army citation as a result of that. This is a picture of Woody in the 1948 Charlotte Reporter, which of course is still the publication that the Big Charlotte Club puts out now. We get it weekly from Christine, but it gives a good history of him. I have a copy of this if anyone is interested in reading it. And then of course, 1948 also represented the year that our club was organized. Does anybody know the date that the club was organized?
Sometime in 1948.
November. November.
No, it's December,
No, not chartered.
Not chartered.
When it
That's
was
chartered.
organized. So, it's interesting. If you go to Christine, the Charlotte Club has all of these old archives. They have all of their board meetings, all of the minutes that took place there. I was able to go over there and look at all of the meeting minutes. They had only 3 or 4 meetings beginning in August about the formation of this new club that they wanted to call the Dilworth Club. Not South End, but just the Charlotte Dilworth Club. And they proposed Woody Kennedy to be kind of the leader of the organization once it was started. But it was actually organized on Tuesday, October the 4th, 1948. And this article talks about that formation. It says a new unit of Rotary International, the Dilworth Rotary Club, was organized yesterday by a group of 18 business and professional men of that locality in a meeting at Gooster's with Paul Lucas Jr., Vice President of the Charlotte Rotarians, presiding. Selected to serve as the first president was Woodford A. Kennedy. This is a picture of the charter presentation, which happened in December of 1948, as Joyce alluded to. And this district governor here is a guy by the name of Everett Bearden. He was a member of the Charlotte Club, But this was the formal presentation of the charter. We actually have the charter still in our archives, in the, our storage unit. But it was quite the event. The Dilworth Rotary Club, under the sponsorship of the then 32-year-old Charlotte Rotary Club, officially received its charter at the Hotel Mecklenburg. And of course, they have to mention the fact that Rotarians and Rotarians of both the new club and that parent organization were there, because of course, women at that time could not be members of Rotary. This is a picture of the founders of the club. We've got the members listed here. You can see some pretty familiar names on here, like William Neville, I mentioned earlier, but also Aubrey Chrisman, whose granddaughter went on to operate the Park Elevator Company. And we had her here as a speaker a few years ago. So this article appeared in the July 1949 Charlotte Observer. And it was a letter from Woody where he talks about the need for a 4-year institution in Charlotte, a 4-year college. He knew that if Charlotte did not get a 4-year institution, yes, people would come here for jobs, but they wouldn't necessarily stay. He saw that 4-year institution as being an anchor and something that was necessary for any city that hoped to grow and to become something special as being absolutely essential. So he worked hard. He made so many trips to Raleigh, lobbying people, lobbying legislators to make the Charlotte City College a 4-year institution. And he says in this letter, nothing less than a new spiritual and scientific awakening of the people of the state can achieve this full promise, and nothing less than a continuous educational crusade can bring the awakening. So fast forward a few years, this is an article that appeared in the UNCC's regular monthly magazine. They talk about Woody Armstrong. They said that he was a member of the first advisory board of Charlotte College in 1947. He believed that Charlotte deserved and in fact needed a great university, and he of course worked tirelessly to raise money and support to make that happen. It's their belief that without Kennedy's perseverance, Charlotte College likely would have remained a 2-year community college. So he was named to Charlotte College's 8-member board in 1949 and really encountered a lot of resistance from people in the community, especially the business executives, and not too much interest from the politicians in Raleigh either. But at the end of this article, they credit Woody as being the spiritual father of the university. And in fact, this building with me here. This is this was a science and engineering building originally, but it was named in his honor because of his influence at UNCC Charlotte. Unfortunately, Woody passed away in 1958. He died on May 11th, 1958. Interestingly, it was one day before he was going to be named to the board of what would then be the University of North Carolina. It was still Charlotte College, but it was 1 year or 1 day before he was actually going to be formally made him the chairman of the special board that was going to oversee the college at that time. And this article talks a little bit about his background, about him being a veteran of World War I, and how he studied at the Sorbonne, and of course his association with the Dilworth Rotary Club, also as former president of the Charlotte Engineers Club. It said death came only a little more than 24 hours before he was due to take his place to be sworn in as a trustee of the Charlotte College under its new status as a state-supported institution, a status for which he had worked long and hard. This was interesting too. I found this in some of his, doing some background on him. This was his last will and testament, and it kind of speaks to his attitude toward orphanages and education. Number 2 here is to the Board of Trustees. He's directing how his estate is going to be divided. But number 2 says, Board of Trustees or other governing body of Catholic orphanage at Nazareth, North Carolina. That's a picture of the orphanage there. Or any successor or orphanage to be used for the benefit of said orphanage or the orphans therein. Number 3, Board of Trustees or other governing body of Masonic orphanage at Oxford, North Carolina, or the trustees of any successor orphanage to be used for the benefit of said orphanage or the orphans therein. So he really cared about children, he cared about education, and he cared about their future. This article appeared in 1962, where it talks about the Charlotte College officially renaming the Science and Engineering Building after his death on May 11th, 1958. And Glenn Cohn of the Charlotte Engineers Club is quoted in this article saying, Woody began his engineering career working with wires and wheels and machinery. Not long afterward, he directed his energies to being a human engineer, a people engineer, he would have called it, and I think that's very appropriate. They also quoted Aubrey Chrisman of the Dilworth Rotary Club, and he said, the harder it was to sell an idea, the more Woody liked it. The article stated Kennedy believed Charlotte was the most, as he put it, under-colleged city in the South. And he spent many hours before the Advisory Budget Commission asking for money and support. But a great article about his life. And so today we still celebrate his legacy, not just as the founder of this club, but a few years ago, of course, we were honoring first responders in this club. And then we came up with the idea of let's rekindle that relationship with UNCC that was established by Woody all those years ago. And we did that through what we now call the W.A. Kennedy Charlotte Dilworth Rotary Scholarship. We've given that award out now for 5 years. And this is in honor of Woody's legacy. 2018, you may remember, we gave it to Daisy Leone, first generation college student in her family, comes from a Hispanic background. Our folks were so proud of her when she received that scholarship. In 2019, we gave it to Erica Drummond, who was, I called her a mature student at the ripe old age of 28, but she was going back to school to become an attorney. 2020 to 21, we had the COVID years. Shelby Shout, who was an artist, a budding artist at that time, and is since married, was the recipient then. 2022, it went to Hank Lineberger from Gaston County, who wants to go into law enforcement. And of course, this year, it was given to Giorgia Marpucci, who came and visited us a few weeks ago. She is the one who speaks Italian and Spanish and 3 or 4 other languages. But she's a great student, a great kid, and was very appreciative of the scholarship. Again, that's in the amount, it's not a lot of money, it's $1,000, but it makes a difference in the lives of these kids who are receiving it. And I think it embodies the spirit of what Woody would see, continuing to be that human engineer and supporting our institutions. So that's it, folks. That's the research we've done.
Wow. Have any information, but back there when he was getting ready to be put on the board at the college, you said there was some criticism of him having that position. Did you have any input or find any input into what the criticism was?
It wasn't so much criticism as it was not of him personally. Everybody loved the guy.
Yeah.
It was just his mission. There were people who just felt like it's kind of the same arguments you hear now. We hear so many arguments about the necessity of STEM. And it is, no question about it. We need people who can be contractors and who can do plumbing, and we need all of that. But we also need people who are intellectuals. We need people who can think. We need people who can solve problems that confront society. That's what he was arguing for. So I think there was just a lot of, why do we need this? You know, And it wasn't, again, not a reflection on him, the man was revered.
He
By
was
a
just
lot of
push,
people.
he was just pushing the college.
He was pushing the college a little bit more than what people were comfortable doing. That's my sense of it. I gotta say too, there's some archives at the University of North Carolina in their archives facility that I had occasion to visit a couple of years ago. And it's a fantastic facility. One of the things that I would love to do is to, at some point, make a donation of what we currently have sitting in our storage facility to the University of North Carolina, where it can be properly archived for people who want to take a look at this stuff long after we're gone. Or maybe not so long. Yeah, are there any other questions? Yes, Barbara, I'm sorry.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that that was an excellent program. I didn't know any of that information, and it gave me such a deeper appreciation for this person that he was and the outcome, that's gone on to blossom into something unbelievable that he would never have been able to imagine how UNCC is now as the great university that it is.
Yep.
Just amazing.
He said one of his quotes that I didn't mention in here was, I see this school as one day being a place where you'll have 10,000 students registered. And then he said rather prophetically, I may not live to see that day, but I predict it's going to happen. And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right.
Yeah, far more than 10,000.
Far more than 10,000, yeah.
There's somebody with 30 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big school. So he would have, there's no question in my mind, he would have been completely overwhelmed by what UNCC has turned into.
Yeah.
I was trying to understand, get a grasp on it when you were kept reading about that we didn't have a four-year institution. And I kept saying, well, what about Queens College? I said, wait a minute, Queens College wasn't.
Right.
It was an all-girls college.
Right.
For a long time, and not until some time way after World War II, that Queens College allowed men started coming to that school, but it was still a two-year school.
Well, I thought it was 4-year, but for women only. They didn't admit men until sometime in the 90s, I believe.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's just been recently.
But I thought it was a 4-year school, and certainly Johnson C. Smith was.
Yeah.
Johnson C. Smith was,
Yeah.
Johnson Smith being
Yeah, being
HBCU,
HBCU.
it wasn't encompassing
Yeah.
everyone in the county.
But both Smith and Queens, I thought were 4-year schools at the time, but certainly Smith was.
This
Any
information.
questions online?
Any questions online, guys?
Thank you.
No.
Yes, wonderful.
No, this was a beautiful.
My hope, well, I've never done anything for Wikipedia before, but my goal is to get all of this in a Wikipedia article. Because I think he deserves it. I really think he deserves it. He's done a lot for this community. And, just one more reason for us to be, I think, mindful and prideful of the people that have gone before us. The point that Darrell was making about that generation, it's all true. Those folks did a lot. They did a lot, and they did a lot of it on their own time. And we can best honor them by carrying on some of the things that they did and some of the sacrifices that they made. So just gotta keep on keeping on, guys.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, and I think too, Kevin, I had read, cause I'm all about the military thing, but I think their textile was a supplier to Camp Green. We used to have a major army base that over Wilkinson Boulevard, all the way down the airport was an army base
Wow.
for World War I. It was called Camp Green.
Wow.
And we still have a street there called Camp Green.
Oh,
But the whole area, West Boulevard, everything was an army base.
interesting.
And so I think their textile supplied them, and they closed that base ironically right during the World War II. It was kind of weird, but World War I, there was a huge army base there. And they're still finding armament. People are building, they're digging up armament from that was there from that base. It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But they're still digging stuff up when they're building along that area. But I think their textile provided the supplies to that base, if I read. When you said that was Nebel,
Neville.
Neville,
William
yeah.
Neville.
And they provided, they were supplied for that base.
It's still, Neville Mills is still there, yeah, it's just been repurposed, for restaurants and shops and things like that, but it's very much still there.
Wow.
Neville?
Neville.
Just tell them that they got.
Thank you. That was, man, that was intriguing. I could have listened to that for a long
I got
time.
this information and I didn't really put it together until I had to last night.
Nothing like a town.
Yes.
Time crunch.
And great storyteller. Oh my God.
That's it.
Time for the raffle.
Yes, it is.
Time for the raffle.
Yeah, and David better not win.